This is Gretchen Carlson of the Martial Journeys podcast, and you're listening to the Kung Fu podcast with T.W. Smith. I'm not bitter about that at all. Actually, I'm really not. You have good taste in podcasts. Keep it up.
Welcome to Kung Fu Podcast, where we explore the culture, the adventure, and the impact of martial arts. I'm your host, T.W. Smith. If this is your first time to the program, welcome. You're in the audience of some of the finest and sharpest martial artists in the world. People that put in a great deal of sweat and a great deal of effort into honing their craft. In this episode, I'm talking with Brian Kuttel, one of the younger generation of Chinese martial arts instructors. When you see his work, I believe you will recognize the sweat and focus that he puts into his training.
Hey, Sifu.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm going to go with we're good to go. I like doing interviews just organically, not a whole lot of preemptive things. It's kind of follow the Tao, right? Just see where it takes us.
Yeah.
With that being said, I've only gotten to see you on videos. I've heard about you some. I know that you and I have some kind of Kung Fu ancestry overlapping here and there, right? But tell me and tell the audience about you. You know, where you at, where you from, those kinds of things.
Okay, so I'm in Geneva, Switzerland, and I've been here since 2018. Before that, I was in San Francisco for 10 years. During that time, it was the biggest influence on my Kung Fu. I was working as program director and as an instructor for Choi Lei Fut Kung Fu and Tai Chi at the School of Grandmaster Doc Fai Wong in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. And that was my full-time job. And it was 7 days a week, just every day in the school, whether or not there's classes. I was, doing maintenance or whatever, and, changing doorknobs or cleaning the school and all that stuff. Right. And of course, training and everything. It was a really great experience at that time. And prior to that, I was in the same lineage, but I was studying in a school in Reno, Nevada. And that was near the hometown that I grew up in. So I was studying there for 8 years before I moved to San Francisco.
Okay. I'm going to be interested because I know that everybody's got a different story. And what drew you to martial arts in general?
Well, it's nothing. I mean, I wish it could be like really, super interesting story, but when I was a teenager, I saw some Bruce Lee movies and I just wanted to be strong. I wanted to be like just so cool like Bruce Lee. Mm-hmm. And I made up my mind at that time that I wanted to do Kung Fu. And I did have prior experience, if you even want to call it that. I took about a month of karate when I was maybe 8 years old. And I was, as an instructor, looking at it, like I know exactly the type of student now. And those are difficult students. And I was definitely one of those. My mind was everywhere else. I was all over the place. And after about a month of trying to get into lessons on time, trying to remember the movements, not practicing at home, and just having my mind scattered, my parents decided it wasn't something worth pursuing if I didn't have my heart in it. So I kind of discount it as training, but when I was a teenager, I was definitely, I was dead set on Kung Fu. So there were no Kung Fu schools in the town I grew up in, only that karate school. And I had friends that were already becoming instructors there. And though I respected the art, I had to be like Bruce Lee. So I found a Kung Fu school in Reno, Nevada, and it was about 40 miles away from my home. So as soon as I got my license and I bought a car, I drove, and I would go 2-3 times a week, and then jumped into as much as I could over there.
Okay. how long after you made the decision to train in Kung Fu did you actually find the school?
Not too long, actually. I would say
Okay.
within a month or so, I found the school because already before that time, my friends and I would go to a martial arts store in Reno. So they had flyers and things around there. And then I had a couple of friends that already did martial arts, and one of them said a lot of good things about the school. It was called Tiger Kung Fu at that time. My first Sifu Hamayan Ahmadzai, changed the name to, I think it's Zai XMA right now, or Zai Martial Arts in Reno. But it had a great reputation, and I went to check it out and did the introductory class, and that was it. I was hooked. End of story.
Right. And I've seen your Choli foot. Looks great. So is that where you started when you started your Kung Fu path?
Yes. So I started with Choi Lui Fut, and then I got into Tai Chi after about 3 years in with Choi Lui Fut. And it was because in that school we taught both, and it was encouraged for the instructors to do both arts. And for me, I was 19 at the time, 18, 19, and it was fun to do, but it didn't really hit me. In fact, even until I moved to San Francisco, it took almost 8-9 years before it hit me how important it was. In fact, once I moved to San Francisco, that was probably the most, what would I say, important time for me working with Grandmaster Dak Fai Wong, because his son is my Sifu. Jason Wong is my Sifu there, and he's my Choi Lui Fut Sifu, but it's the school of Grandmaster. And one of the coolest things was Grandmaster still taught he had like a community class that he was teaching in Chinatown, and the school is actually in the Sunset District, so we're out by the ocean. And he was teaching a weekly class over in Chinatown, and at a community center. It was no charge. Lots of just seniors or just Tai Chi enthusiasts would come over. And he asked because he knew I was only working at the school, he asked if I would drive him over. And I'll tell you, just driving between his house and that school and the Tai Chi center, I got a lot of lessons. I got a lot of in-depth lessons just on the drive. And it took me a little bit of time, because at first, I knew of him. He was the grandmaster of the style that I'd learned when I was in Reno. And for 7 years, I had only seen him at seminars, and I had limited interactions with him. And my superiors always looked up to him, and they tried to make this very almost overly respectful approach to it. So I was, in the first couple of sessions, it was like quiet driving in the car, and I was afraid to ask any questions. And then I just started with a couple, because I was just so interested in the art. I moved to San Francisco for the art. And then from that point on, I got the best information during those sessions, just driving back and forth. But doing Tai Chi there at the community center was also really, really important for me, because I began to learn so much depth to my Tai Chi. And he never really spent time trying to teach people the long parts of the form or the sequence of the form. He would go in there and he would teach. His main thing was teaching just chunks of taking a chunk of it, taking it apart, focusing on the detail so that people could do it, correctly. And I learned so much out of those ones for my Tai Chi training. And that's when my mind started to think in a Tai Chi method as well, because before it was just moving slow.
Right. Absolutely. So, it's funny. First is that I tell my students today that I learn more lessons around the dinner table with my Sifu, because after we get through a practice, we would quite often, at least once, usually twice a week, after we practiced for a couple hours, we would sit down as a collective group, and he would either prepare dinner or we would go out and have dinner. And around those dinner tables, the lessons that I learned that I still, try to implement today was amazing. And it used to be, back in those days, was the great big cassette decks, and with the cassette deck that was about that big, that used a great big, you can't hardly find the big D batteries. right? There was like a bar of soap.
Yeah.
So the cassette deck took four D-sized batteries, right? And so, much like yourself, I drove from Pinehurst to Fayetteville through Fort Bragg to get to my seafood to practice. That was one way. And on the way back, I would always record the things I had learned, the things I had not done well, the things I'd done well. I still have some of those cassettes floating around. And then on my way to the lesson, I would listen to my notes, so I would know when I showed up to practice what I needed to work on. And it was part of his encouragement. He said, if you're practicing your Kung Fu, you approach it like any apprentice would approach his job, like a blacksmith and whatever else. And so I have a notebook that's about 4 inches thick of all my personal notes of the styles. So when you started and you were getting ready to learn, did you have personal goals for yourself? I know you said you wanted to, look like Bruce Lee, and my Sifu would always say there's only 3 types of Kung Fu: Kung Fu for show, Kung Fu for fighting, and Kung Fu for health. Mm-hmm. Right? And Kung Fu for show was important, right? Because that's like doing the demonstrations, the lion dancing, right? Attracting students, and every system and style has different forms of showmanship. Kung Fu for health, whether that was in the Qigong or built in some of the forms. And of course, the combative pieces, because basically, and as a practitioner, you were required to know which one you were doing, right? You couldn't just do it and say, okay, yeah, I'm doing Tai Chi and this is how you would use it. And you'll go, no, that's for health. That's to help you open up your hips and to move through and things like that. So my goal was, when I first started, was just to get to know myself and to get to know who I was. And that really helped me. Did you have personal goals besides the Bruce Lee piece?
Yeah, definitely. It's funny. The first year, I would say I just did it because I didn't know what else to do. I showed up to class. It was a good workout. I learned self-defense techniques. I thought it was really cool. And then I learned some cool movements here or there if the instructor wanted to show some stick stuff for the day. And it wasn't until after that first year. And it's kind of, there was a pivotal point, and it came from work at the time. I was on a job with my father and my grandfather, and we were out in the middle of nowhere, Nevada. If you think of nowhere, Nevada, it's even outside of that.
Okay.
It's a little town called Montello, and there were maybe 50 houses in that town, not all of them occupied. The day we rolled into town, the gas station / grocery store closed down because the guy had been skipping taxes and things like that. So we had to drive 50 miles one way to get food, groceries, do laundry. And we were up 5 miles up in the hills outside of this town to work on a spring water project. And initially it was supposed to take about 2 weeks, and everything that could go wrong went wrong. One of the guys on our crew sunk a huge excavator in the mud, and we had to bring in another excavator from Elko, Nevada, which took a day and a half, and we sunk a bulldozer trying to get that one out. And it was just like, I was a 17-year-old and so frustrated with everything that had gone wrong. I remember standing on that hillside one day. I had just the worst day, even for myself. I had popped tires on the truck that we had, and I was embarrassed with my work and everything. And I remember just shouting out at the town of, whoever was down there. I was so upset. And, but that job separated me from the world that I knew. And it was supposed to be a 2-week job, something that we had done before, but it ended up being about 6 weeks. And that separation gave me a lot of discipline and a lot of, I guess you could say that's where I set my compass. That's where I calibrated. Every aspect of my life, when I went back, I decided I wanted progress. And then once I went back and I started getting back into my Kung Fu lessons, I was going in with more fervor. I was more serious about the training, and that caught the eye of my instructor. And he suggested maybe that I join in the assistant instructor program or the instructor training program. And I didn't know what to say. And he's like, oh, but it's a good workout. At least do it for that. And I was like, all right, I'll do it for that. And of course, that's when we just started really getting into goal setting and things. And I wanted to work on improvement. And we were looking at basic things: improve your mile, improve your splits, improve your push-ups, improve your horse stance. It was cool because if you did not improve, and it just, even a small improvement was good enough. But if you did not improve in your last week's time, you were cut from the program. So there was that competitive level too. And that's when I started to notice over the time on that program, I think it was also about a 6-week program, I saw that I had made changes, and I kind of became addicted to that, because here I am, I'm a kid. I was 17 at the time, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I'm making improvements. I'm becoming stronger, faster, clearer. My mind was clearer. I had so much more discipline. And then it was around that time too, I started setting goals for my life in general. And I have a notebook that I take out every year. I still have it. It's so like this old notebook from school. And I write down all my goals, and I check them off as I do them, check in on it maybe once a month or so. But that's when I started really setting goals and trying to move up to my next level, trying to improve on this or that. And it's been like that since.
So I think every style of martial arts can bring challenges, right? And some of them are physical challenges. My secret, we have to practice Jam Jung. He required us, if we were going to learn certain things, you had to be able to stand and do your standing meditation, right? And so we were required, by the time you got to some of the upper levels, you had to be able to stand and not move for an hour.
Wow.
And my students today, when they say, hey, Sifu, I'd like to learn that. Okay. You start here, right? And, I think the thing that I realized is that when my Sifu would make us do that, I would go out to the park. We practiced outside every Saturday, for example, and during the week. But one of the things that happened was that there were people out there already doing it. He would practice, and he would do his Jam Jung stand. And there were a couple of senior classmates of mine at the time who were my inspiration, because I remember going over there, and the biggest challenge for me was me. I realized that when I got out there to do my meditation, at 10 minutes in, I was like, I don't know how to stand myself. I mean, my mind was going all over the place. I was distracted. And it really took a good year or so of daily practice before I really became at peace with myself, accept my flaws and some of my shortcomings, and then I could work on them. He would often tell us, you can't improve upon what you avoid.
That's profound.
And I was like, okay, I don't like to hear that. Right. But so what were some of your biggest challenges?
Well, so it's interesting now that you mention it, because I kind of look at it in phases. In the phase when I was coming up through Reno, there were certain challenges, and it was more martial arts based, more physical based. There was the typical, I guess, student experience. But it was when I moved to San Francisco, that's where a lot of the personal challenges came in, because I was trying to run a school as a professional. I was young. I was 23, and I was trying to be like a businessman. I was given the keys, and I was in the driver's seat, and I made a lot of mistakes in the beginning, and I learned a lot from it. But that was one of the challenges, to balance how I could improve in my business, but then also improve in the arts and improve. Like you said earlier, you mentioned the cultural part of it, like when you had the tea with your Sifu. There was a lot that I learned about Chinese culture when I finally moved to San Francisco and started driving Grandmaster around to, the Tai Chi class. And then I would drive him to, if he had lunch with a friend, I would be the chauffeur. And, there's some funny stories about the first couple of times, because here I am with him at a restaurant, everybody's speaking Cantonese. Every so often he'll ask me something in English, but I'm just sitting there and trying to just gather out of context what's going on. And then things like pouring tea and, like he, he would order just to see what I would handle. He wanted to see where I would speak up. He would try to order some things, the interesting Chinese food, the chicken feet, duck tongue, the little squid or the little octopus and snails and things like that.
Right.
And it worked out well because I didn't speak up because I was also kind of interested in trying it. And more than anything else, I actually really enjoyed it. And that showed well. And I think that even though it's, something silly as eating, it was, just, it showed that I was interested in trying all aspects. And culture-wise too, I remember there was one Sunday, and it was February in 2008. I was in the school cleaning, and it was like my second or third week there. And I figured I would be the only one in the school. And all of a sudden I hear the front door open, and I turn and look, and it's my grandmaster and another man, and they're talking. And his grandmaster said, "Well, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I'm here to clean. It's just an easier way to do this. And then on Monday I can, come in and go straight to business." He's like, "Oh, that's nice." And he's like, "We're doing the feng shui for the school right now. Why don't you help?" So I helped him move stuff and put things in place and do all of that. And from that point on, I became like his assistant in that. And I began to learn parts of feng shui as well, like how to calculate, the qua number and element and the basics, like basic level. And I would drive him and the feng shui master out to different jobs and stuff too, and help on those jobs. And just picking up these little nuances and little things, I had to do it on the spot because there was not always time to explain what went on unless it was something where I completely messed up. And then he would have to tell me later on, "Hey, next time, don't do it."
Yeah. It's funny you say it. One of the things that I developed for myself when you bring up the eating puck thing is I developed the don't ask, just eat.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there were too many times I asked, and I'm like, I shouldn't have asked, right? And it's interesting you said that because feng shui was something that, of course, I had never heard of, but it is it's a real important component of the culture. And later on, it was like, okay, well, some of this actually kind of makes sense. I mean, some of it people do already, and you already know. But you didn't know you knew, and you certainly had never related to feng shui, right? But one of the things, like, in front of every door, we had a mirror. So that as soon as you walked in the door, there was a mirror there. And he always said, that way, in case if someone comes in with evil intentions into your home or to your business, and they have bad intentions, the first thing you have to look at is themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So any place I go, and it's going to be a place in my establishment, in front of my door is a mirror, so that just made sense to me. I had a note here too about asking you. Running a school is a real challenge. I've had my own school for almost, I guess, 16 years. In Raleigh. It does. That balance is really a hard thing to kind of find, and to continue trying to improve upon yourself, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It really is a challenge. Now that you have moved to Geneva, how has the journey changed for you? I know that it seems like you put out more videos now. I see you doing a few other little things that look, you always look like you have well practiced what you're presenting. And the other thing is that you always look like you're having fun. It's obvious that at least those two pieces I see, but how has your journey changed now?
It's been a big change. It's the Kung Fu and Tai Chi have been my anchor. I have my support. I have my wife here, and it's been nice to be in a new country and have my wife and all of that. But on the inside, for me personally, my identity is my martial arts. So regardless if I'm making videos or not, I still have my practice. I still have myself. I know who I am. And moving to this country has been a huge question of identity because I am Swiss. My father's Swiss. My grandparents actually moved to America, and then it's weird now I moved here. But at the same time, it has been, other than having a Swiss passport, it's been a very difficult experience to assimilate here because Geneva's nice. It's a very international city, and a lot of people will speak English. But when it comes down to doing things for taxes or for the community or speaking to my neighbors, this is on the French side of Switzerland. So everything is in French. Sometimes paperwork will be in German or Italian. And I know some German because for the first year and a half, I was doing a lot over on the Swiss German speaking side. And on that side, I mean, I can't say I was very well prepared. I knew maybe 4 words in Swiss German before moving out here. And I more or less had to learn while just thrown into the fire. I didn't have access to courses at the time, and I just had to function and develop with it. I'm kind of finding myself now back in that same situation now that I'm in Geneva full time, and I'm just basically starting over in French. But I have been taking classes and things, but you take for granted a lot when you're fluent in the language, you're fluent in the system of living, because just little things like there's quiet hours here. There's, quiet days like Sunday, all stores are closed. It's encouraged that you spend time with your family or you go out hiking or whatever, but you don't clean house. You don't do laundry. You don't go to the supermarket. Like it's all, everything's closed and you're not supposed to run machines. It's the Swiss way.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And it's been all these times where I have some conversation with somebody. In English, I have all the words. I can tell them in a poetic way. I can tell them in a concise way. I can drag out a conversation. I can make small talk. But in French, I only have just simple means of making a sentence, and same in Swiss German. And it's, I don't usually open up about my martial arts to people. That's usually something my friends even find out later on because I do it for me. But it's been a huge question of who am I and how do I get in here as an instructor and teach? Because I want to teach. Finding a place to actually start teaching was a really tough search. But luckily, it's maybe a 10-minute walk from my apartment. I found a nice place close by that I can rent time from. And that's also given me the opportunity to film a lot more for my videos. And then, of course, we had to deal with COVID. So that's a huge stop on everything, too.
Right,
but
right.
I found that to be something that I've been able to adapt to, though, because it's given me an opportunity to go in, instead of going in to teach at the location, instead of teaching students on site, I've been able to film more content for YouTube. And this year I finally put up a website, and eventually I'm going to start, I've been in the editing and building process, but I'm going to start some online learning. So at least there's that direction as well. So it hasn't been too much downtime, even with COVID going on.
No, well, the winter time is the time for development. Springtime is time for growth. And the COVID experience has been, shut down a lot of things. I've tried to use it as a way to develop myself, the processes of getting more studies done, getting podcasts. I started Kung Fu Podcast primarily as a way to promote traditional Chinese martial arts in a healthy, when I say healthy, a non-magical sort of format. I mean, so much of the Chinese martial arts now is either portrayed as some form of like chi magic, and or it's a lot of it now is also just in movies and things. There's a real solid base like your Sifu. They come from a very well known fighting system.
Yes.
Right? And it was very assertive. The training is grueling. I'm sure that you've had to hit the poles and hit the beating on the things. And when my Sifu would say, always bury your soul in the pole, right? So when you're hitting that 200-pound wooden dummy, or we hit a telephone pole. Still, most of my students all have one now, and so you practice the South Choi, right? All that, you're hitting all those and working on your Choli foot against that wooden pole. And he would say, just bury your soul in the pole. And basically translated was that one day you won't be afraid to hit the pole.
Yeah.
And it's not that you're trying to hit it hard. You're trying to learn to condition your mind and your heart. And one day you won't be afraid to hit the pole. And when another man holds up his arms, all you're going to see are two twigs.
Yep.
You won't be afraid to hit him, right? You won't be afraid to hit his arms. And I can tell you that little do this, that'll lead to that. Those were the sort of things that I started building my life around. Lessons like that. What do I need to do to get myself in condition so that I could do that one day? Are you working on any other projects, like besides the website, writing? I think you even had a blog or two going out.
Yeah. So I've kind of tried to put everything onto my website now. So I've been kind of always trying to share things across all social media. And but now I'm trying to condense. So I have a blog on my website, and it's more just, I don't know, I'm not trying to draw much from, trying to draw much traffic or attention to it, but it's there. And I hope that at some point somebody's going to need to find something, whether it be the plans from I just built a Kung Fu bench. And so I wrote out my plans and then I made a video about it. And at least now it's in one spot on the blog. So maybe somebody wants to find that, or if they want to just find out that they had an experience in a class, that's a normal thing, or if they find themselves in a rut and, where I've had experience in that same rut and how I got out of it. And that's there. And then also I kind of caught the writing bug because it's always been something. Actually, that was something that Grandmaster Doc Fai Wong started me on many years ago. And he said, start, if you have the time, write an article, submit it. And, he knew Dave Cater at Inside Kung Fu magazine. So I was able to get connected there. I was able to have one article published before they ended up stopping publication. And then I tried with a couple other publications, and luckily Gene Ching over at Kung Fu Tai Chi magazine, he picked up one of my articles. And then it's really cool how that worked out, because I want to say maybe after the second or third article that I would submit, we would talk a little bit more. And he kind of took me, I don't know how he sees it, but the way I see it is he kind of took me under his wing, and he's mentored me, at least on the writing side, and given me sometimes straightforward criticism.
Right.
And other times he's pushed me in a good direction. And that was really nice. That went on for years. And even while I was here in Geneva, I still was able to submit 2 more articles before they stopped print publication. And I know they're doing web publication, but I'm not sure how that's going. So I haven't tried to send anything over to them at this point. But I was able to write a book last year, and COVID time gave me time to figure out the whole system of publishing through Amazon. And I wrote and drew the pictures and did all of that. And now that I'm comfortable with the system, I'm definitely going to be releasing more books. It's just, finding the time to contribute, right?
Right.
And,
what's the name of the website?
My website? It's seafoodkuttel.com.
Okay. All right. What was the name of the book that you had published there at Amazon?
The book is called Monkey Movement, the Guide to Monkey Techniques, Movement, and Acting. And it was a chance to it's a very basic, simple format, because I didn't want to go into too much. It's the Choi Le Fut monkey form is what I'm basing it off of, in my experience in it. So it's not like I'm saying it's the entire monkey system. Right. And I have gotten messages about that. They're like, people are like, well, what about, what do I do next? I'm like, this is from Choi Le Fut.
Right.
But it's got basic techniques. I wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of the cultural side for the acting in a form, and the kind of demystify some of the things that you would expect. I try to do that in some of my videos too, when I talk about animal styles, is that people try to get in their mind that once they learn this animal style, that they're going to be all of a sudden an expert fighter. And it's like, no, it's not the case. These techniques are useful, but they're not your main art. They're just add-ons. They're plus ones for your art, and you can use it when the timing is right, when the angle is right, but you got to have your basics so that you can actually fight. But that book is about more of the acrobatic techniques to introduce some of that, so that people in the system, if they want to develop it, they can learn how to do it, and they can learn on their own. Because I don't talk about the form other than the structure of it, how there's some acting, the moves, and how it closes up, and how that has that significance. So they can take those techniques along with some of the strikes and kicks mentioned in the book, and then, actually put together their own training if they want to, or if they already know the form, they can tighten it up and clean it up more.
I've seen your work, and I know where you're coming from, and so I know you got a good base on it, and a good expression of it too. Are you planning to stay there in Geneva? Is this where you forecast that this is where you're going to be for the next while?
For the next while, I would say for at least the next 5 years or so, depending on if we want to stay here, or if my wife decides that, it's time to move and work somewhere else, then we'll go that way.
Okay. Yeah.
Who knows? We might end up in Singapore. We may end up in Africa. Who knows?
Well, I'm sure I'm going to be here in North Carolina for the rest of my time. So would you be open to trying to get back together again and say in a few months and having a conversation again?
Absolutely. Right. I would love that.
I'd like to talk with you at some point about, your experiences about running into chi practitioners, as far as, it getting way over the skis into magic land, but not dismissing it either.
Yes.
That's something I'd like to talk with you further about. And then some of the other inner arts. I mean, one of the things we were always taught, if you're going to be a good practitioner of, for example, Chole foot, which is pretty much like, you crank up the lawnmower and here you go.
Yeah.
Right? And you might change the blades a little bit here and there, but when you're seeing someone practice wholehearted Chole foot, there's not a lot of ambiguity about what it is he's trying to do. Right. And that if you're going to practice something that hard, you had to practice the inside as well. You had to have something to do to create, because see what I'll say, if you're going to practice destroying things, you have to practice creating things, or you're out of balance.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like part of your creation was your writing, putting things together. But I'd like to dig into that a little bit further too. So is there anything you'd like to share with the audience before we go? I mean, is any seminars you might be going to, or seminars you might be putting out, or what we can look for in the next couple of months as far as YouTube presentations?
Yeah, at this time it's all YouTube wise, but I am actually going to be releasing a second channel on YouTube, and it's more just because it's going to be a Tai Chi only channel, because before I was only releasing maybe one video a month for Tai Chi. So for my Kung Fu viewers, there was 1 week that they would sometimes, some people like both arts, but sometimes people would just skip a week. And then for my Tai Chi people, they're sitting there 3-4 weeks waiting for another video to drop. So now I'm separating it. So they'll have, there's going to be more videos.
Right. More content going out to different channels, right? All right. Well, look, take care of yourself. I look forward to talking with you again soon.
Hey, thanks so much. And yeah, you take care too. We'll see you later.
Yes, sir. Bye now.
I hope you enjoyed that interview with Brian. I look forward to having him on the program again in the future. He's one of those fine young Chinese martial arts instructors that I believe is going to bring a great deal of energy in the years to come. In the next episode that's going to be released pretty shortly after this one, it's all about Ip Man and the prostitute. Make sure that you have a fantastic practice today. Put in your sweat, your focus, and I look forward to talking with you again real soon.